Q&A with you. Should we be worried about a fascism comeback? And I know that you said that Newsroom supplied the questions and then you had a limited number of words to kind of reply the answer to. But one of the questions that you were asked, that you answered, which I'd like to cover off on now, is what does fascism look like in today's world? I mean, as I said, we hear lots of buzzwords that get thrown around, whether it's you know, Nazi or fascist or you know, what Antifa or whatever it is. When this word gets used in 2025, fascism, what does actual fascism look like in 2025?
You know, so I think real, genuine, historic fascism hasn't really been seen in the world since World War II. I think in the post-war years, it became a sort of byword for anyone dictatorial or authoritarian,
right,
with sort of right-wing tendencies. So I think it's, in a sense, that the true historic meaning of the word has been devalued, and it's used in a very generic sense. But Trump arriving on the scene has started a new sort of debate about whether this is a recrudescence of fascism, and I think that's a really interesting possibility. I thought it shows early warning signs, and that's a sort of pre-quote of your little TikTok video.
Should we do that? Should we do that now? Let's do that now, eh?
Yeah, let's.
So I came across this, someone sent this, actually someone made a comment to one of our YouTube clips, Chewie, with this and said this may be of interest. So this is a talkback host on LBC in the UK. We're going to miss the first couple of words, but she's basically saying, Nick has sent me the text and they're annoyed with how she's sort of referring to the US administration or some of the ongoings as fascism. And this is what she says.
Has texted in repeatedly to tell me how cross he is with me for describing the US administration, the current US administration, as far right. So I'm going to read for you. The Holocaust Museum displays a poster which says early warning signs of fascism. I'm just going to read them to you, and you can tell me which of these you don't think applies to Trump. Powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for human rights, identification of enemies as a unifying cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government entwined, which is what we're talking about this hour, corporate power protected, labour power suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption.
So that's from the Holocaust Museum, and the question, and obviously the question the host is saying is, if we can't speak of the Trump administration in this way, if they tick all these boxes, what else is it? And look, another thing, actually, sorry, Mark, before we go on, is I wonder how many of those boxes will also be ticked by either New Zealand First or ACT. I don't think they tick all of them, but there are several in there that I kind of go, defunding RNZ, you know, that kind of stuff. But there's a few. But there you go, Mark. That's the video that's kind of sparked this whole conversation.
Yeah. I mean, here what happens is that you find out that even though I've worn a baseball cap and a hoodie, I am actually a professor of history and I'm an academic and I'm very fussy. So you might have noticed that she began by saying, Nick is really cross with me for describing Donald Trump as far right.
Yeah.
Didn't say fascism, she said far right.
True. Yep.
And then she said, here's the Holocaust Museum's definition of early warning signs of fascism. So she's already done what I said, which is conflate fascism with far right. But the other thing is that comes from a poster that was written in 2003 by a political commentator in the United States. It has nothing to do with the Holocaust Museum, except that the gift shop allegedly sold it. But she's passing it off as a really, you know, authoritative institution's definition. It is not that. It is one business scholar's idea that, you know, he wrote in 2003. So pardon me for sort of just investigating that document, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. I think he makes a lot of interesting points. I don't think it's a load of nonsense at all, but it is not an authoritative statement from the Holocaust Museum in the United States. You know, what I think a definition of fascism could be much simpler than those 14 points. And I basically said that the things that distinguish fascism are its insistence on a constant national rebirth. It's what the scholar Roger Griffin called palingenetic nationalism, constant rebirth. And you could see Make America Great Again as an ideal example of that, the rebirth of something that has been somehow held back and held down by corrupt, East Coast elites. A totally religious faith in the leader to know the way. And you mentioned that, Chewie, earlier on. And I mean, you could probably say that about communism in Soviet Russia, those two things. But the other thing is that they really believe in the reinforcement of existing social hierarchies, which communism didn't. So that's a relatively simple idea, but to me, those are the distinguishing features of fascism. And looking at, say, Trump's America, I think you can see some of those things emergent.
Yes.
The question is whether the social structure and the institutional structure is strong enough to resist them. And if you look at Harvard fighting back and so on, there's much more fight in American institutions than there was in Italian systems in 1922.
There seems to be more fight from the institutions for this Trump term, whereas in the last Trump term, there seemed to be more fight from what they refer to as the adults in the room. There seemed to be people with Trump that were pushing back more, and now there seems to be no one with Trump. But some, as you say, Harvard, the institutions are kind of going, yeah, we're going to push back now. So,
well, they're being much more directly attacked than they were last time as well. So they have to fight back or die.